Hello, and welcome to the annual Art Education Technology Pechakucha presentation. This presentation was meant to be done at NAA Minneapolis, but due to the coronavirus, it was not, and we have managed to pull together our presenters to do this activity virtually, and we thank you for coming. The presentations were proposed by our AET members, vetted and selected by the board, and selected presenters submit their files to be compiled in order to save time. And we set a timer for 7 minutes, and the presentation begins. When the alarm goes off, the presentation ends. If possible, we usually have a few minutes to ask questions at the end, and this will be available on the presenter portal under my name. For the purposes of our session today, we did not set the timer because we did not have the normal time constraints. So here we go. Our first presenter is Guimei Yang, and she is going to present on the Tilt Brush by Google. And coming up is her presentation. Thank you.
Click, please. Can I use my finger to signal that? All right. And in order to use the Tilt Brush, you will need the headset. And let me lean over to show you. I'm sorry. Okay. You need a headset, you gotta put it on, and then you have a controllers. But of course, that there are some popular platforms, and so I listed on the slides. Now, can you click all the points on this one? So what are the features of the Tilt Brush? The Tilt Brush, basically, after you put a headset on, you have two controllers. And the one controller allows you to control the different panels. And the one is like a tool panel. You can see on the left-hand side of my PowerPoint. And another one is brushes, and it is different types of brushes. There are 5 panels of those brushes. And the one thing is like you would expect those regular brushes that you can see in PowerPoint, but there are some brushes that is very unique. Like you can paint fire, you can paint amber, you can paint smoke. And then the third panel is the color. You can pick a color, right? Can you click all the points on the slide? Okay. And the next one. Now, who uses Tilt Brush? Tilt Brush is used by a growing number of the artists. And next point, please. Yeah, you can click all the points, down. And Google is launched something called Tilt Brush Artist Residency. Google has its own engineers team up with the 60 plus visual and performing artists. And those artists are like graffiti artists and painters, illustrators, graphic designers, dancers, and cartoonists. And next, I will be able to show you just on the website, some of those Tilt Brush work by professional artists, and also by, anyone like us, in the poly. And then there are galleries around the world actually show VR work. And so at this point that Deborah, can I share my screen now? And so I can show those videos.
Yes, I'm going to work on trying to do that right now.
Okay.
I'm going to stop my share. And I'm going to make you the host, and then you should be able to have the controls to share.
Okay, all right. So I am going to share my screen, and then now you can see. All right. So this is a Tilt Brush Artist Residency website, and you can see there are those already had their residency and they put their artwork here. So this is a great place to see those professional work. That residency is still work in progress. Next, this is called Google Poly. This is basically the crowdsourcing. Everyone can put your work in Poly. And then after you enter Poly, you can, click and, the law in this viewer. And those work, of course, is not two-dimensional. You can see they are three-dimensional work, all right? And the great thing about this is that you can actually import that into your VR space and then remix, And then next, I want to show you people in, professional gallery in the world. They are actually showing VR work.
It's a gallery space like no other. Bare walls, no sculptures, canvases, or photographs, just several headsets and a dark, sponge-lined room. For centuries, new technologies helped art to evolve. This is the next level. I'm floating in a colossal, bright space. It feels like I'm in miniature and there are giants around me. There's a huge garden. I've now floated into a huge room and what looks like the artist is sitting on a floor down below me. It all sounds very Alice in Wonderland. Why? Quite simply because it is. The work's by American artist Rachel Rossin, the first of several immersive displays on show in this dedicated virtual reality art space. This isn't just simply about
Right. Deborah, how much time do I still have? You need to unmute yourself.
About a minute.
About a minute. All right. Now I am going to try to show it real time and let you see what's inside of my goggle, okay? My headset. And hope this I can do it in a minute, all right? And if I fail, I will stop, and Deborah will make me stop, okay? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my website, and I am going to share. I'm going to start sharing, and this time I am going to share events. So basic. Usually I'm able to share my iPhone. It's okay. I'm going to events from second camera, see whether, okay. Let me see whether it actually shows that. All right. This setting is a little bit different from what I have. It's okay. I'm going to see Google Chrome. This setting is not available for me. Any idea? Because I usually can show, because my iPhone is connected to all right. I'm sharing. Let me see whether I can do this. New recording. Yeah. I think this is
presenting the real world in the virtual. It's also about experiencing the artist's mind frame and emotional state at the time of creation.
Okay. So I am going to do basic. I'm going to since I am, okay, this is Google Chrome, okay? I'm gonna just, instead of showing you the real-time thing, I am going to show you
long before the tech was
the video. So here is just, I'm sorry that I was gonna do the real thing, but this is closest to a real thing. All right, I think you get a good idea what it can do, and just imagine that, you know, students, like a little kid.
Drawing too, and then I'm gonna draw. We're gonna like share each other, okay? Okay, good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we're not gonna study.
So just imagine that kids can create this kind of virtual 3D painting, and everyone, all the kids and the parents and the teachers, school community can all get in there and be in the 3D painting, brush sketches, and interact with those. Thank you. That is my presentation. Sorry about the technical difficulty. Thank you.
Can you go ahead and make me the host again?
All right. So I stopped sharing.
I got it. I can reclaim it.
Okay.
I'm going to let some folks in here that have been waiting. Sorry for those of you that have been waiting to get in. We are in the middle of a session, and we are recording this, so we will be posting the whole entire thing so you can see it a little bit later on. All right, I'm going to share my screen again and get ready for this next session.
Yeah, Deborah, I'm scheduled to be next. If you think it would be smoother for us to do the pre-recorded video, I'm okay with that. But
I can
if
do
you
that, whichever you'd like to do.
let's do the video just to keep things smooth, and I can then answer questions afterwards.
Okay. All right, here we go. I'm not hearing any sound.
I'll just do the presentation then with the slides. I just wanted to, whatever is easiest.
All right, so we're going to take that off, and we're going to take that off, and we're going to go here. All right. Thanks for everyone's patience. We're working hard to keep this going.
Okay, if you want to go to the next slide, my first slide. Okay, perfect. Well, hello everyone. My name is Nicholas Leonard. I'm a current doctoral student and visiting lecturer at Northern Illinois University. My presentation is introducing a posthuman perspective into a digital art classroom setting entitled Entanglement Art Education. Next slide. Now, when I mention a posthuman focus, I'm not arguing for an anti-human platform. Instead, I actually want to reevaluate how humans view their relationships with their digital art materials. I want to move beyond treating digital technologies as occasionally social entities and start recognizing matter in the process of becoming and how different interactions between materials can produce new possibilities. Next slide. Now, I understand that may sound interesting, but not really practical in the day-to-day activities in a classroom, but current developments are continuing to challenge our understanding of authorship and creativity when computer programs are developing new content. To the left is the first AI artwork sold at Christie's for nearly $500,000, which was 45 times more than the expected amount. To the right is a cookbook filled with recipes created by IBM's Watson AI. How do we as digital art educators begin discussing authorship and creativity with students in regards to these examples? Next slide. Moving even closer to the digital art classroom setting, I started thinking about how algorithms frequently co-create with the human user, such as Adobe's Photoshop Content-Aware Fill. Here, the user can outline a section of an image, allowing an algorithm to generate content to fill the space. Until the algorithm produces this content, the result is unknown, creating an opportunity to discuss concepts of agency and authorship. Next slide. Another popular example is Google's Quick Draw, which was a free game where users were asked to draw a simple object. These drawings were then used to train Quick Draw's AI, allowing the program to predict drawings and make suggestions to simple doodles in real time. You can go online to interact with Quick Draw and even view the entire data set of digital drawings. Next slide. In an even more cutting-edge program, GoGAN is a type of generative adversarial network, which uses training algorithms to generate realistic content from simplistic color-coded doodles in real time. This is a video. You can check it out online on YouTube. It's really amazing. We'll go to the next slide. As I began to explore how I engage with algorithms during art making, I frequently found myself asking, is this program acting like a tool or a partner? I also became curious as to what students in digital art classes thought. Next slide. In a survey of 57 high school digital art students, I discovered that approximately 50% of students viewed digital technologies as a tool, while 28% said that digital technologies were a partner, and 14% stated that the role of a tool or partner was situationally dependent on the activity. Next. This was very interesting to me and made me question my educational philosophy and how I instruct future art educators at Northern Illinois University. I then began engaging with various perspectives of digital technologies, including posthumanism and new materialist understandings. I would have the class discuss and debate various computer-generated artworks and then have them reflect on their own art-making practices in class. Next slide. To explore digital material, we would glitch art. To do this, the students would open an image file with a text editor, manipulate the code, and then reopen the file as an image to see what adjustments the computer has made. We would then discuss the experience with digital material in this manner compared to using a program such as Photoshop. As the course continued, students would engage with programs such as processing to use text-based coding to create an image and explore computational thinking. In this example, Christopher made a portrait in processing, then repeatedly glitched the image files and then compiled those images into a GIF animation, which unfortunately isn't playing at the moment. Next slide. This here is another one example of a student's glitched artwork of a ballerina, and I just thought this was very interesting in terms of posthumanism, because a lot of people believe that the human gets blurred out, but I think that this actually makes us feel a heightened awareness of our relationships with digital matter. Next slide. In current courses, I now introduce generative adversarial networks, known as GANs, in the classroom for artwork production. Here, one algorithm works to produce a brand new image that would fit into a set of images provided to a second algorithm. The image displayed here is one example I share with my students, which can easily be made using a GAN called, a web-based GAN called ArtBreeder. Next slide. Much of this new understanding and exploring relations with digital technologies was started after I read Karen Barada's work on posthumanism, specifically agental realism. This work was inspired because I was searching for a way to explore the complex interplay between digital technologies and users for creative endeavors. Next slide. To describe these complex relations that matter has with other matter, Karen Barada uses the double slot experiment for measuring light. Here, light can appear as a wave or as a particle, depending on the tool used to measure light. This phenomenon is significant because it is a great example of all matter participating in the co-creation of other matter, known as matter's becoming. Next slide. Matter's entanglement with other matter complicates the relationship of the observer and the observed, since they are both embedded and embodied within each other. This complex relationship also focuses on what matter is in the process of becoming together. Next slide. Cannon-Broad describes diffraction as a term focused on how differences are made as the result of matter's entanglement with other matter. As an art educator, I'm curious as to what classroom entanglements create and support creativity. Next slide. This ongoing process of development or renewal from matters interacting with other matter is referred to as becoming. As an art education researcher, I'm curious as to how students and teachers view their relationships with digital technologies for supportive creative becomings as defined by their unique entanglements. Next slide. Since entanglements are complex and messy, I do not wish to make a prescription or a description of what occurs. Instead, I'm interested in exploring how introducing a post-human perspective into a digital art classroom setting influences creative becomings in the classroom, and how that story can influence the perspectives of others. Next slide. Maybe an entanglement-focused art education can be part of our future art curricula, as entanglements can also be used to explore social justice and environmental issues, while also allowing for educators to also factor in non-human influences in their classroom. This here was a video that would autoplay by Rafika Dole.
I have the video. Do you want me to show it?
If we have time, this is the second to last slide.
Okay.
This is
Go
just
ahead with
one
your
digital
next slide,
painting.
and then I'll show it. Okay.
Okay. We'll go to our last slide here, which is just the title.
Okay.
I want to thank you all for your time. Due to the coronavirus's entanglement with travel and education, among many other factors, I would highly encourage you to send me an email or find me on Twitter to continue this discussion. I would also like to mention that an article titled Entanglement Art Education, Factoring in Artificial Intelligence and Non-Humans into Future Art Curricula will be published in NAEA's Art Education Journal later this year, which investigates these concepts in more detail. Thank you once again for all your time. And I also have the pre-recorded file that I can share online if you would like. I don't want to, I know we had a little bit of a delayed start with adjusting things. So I know Christopher also has another presentation later today.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was great. And we appreciate everyone's flexibility in this. We had quite a few people join us during that session. So if you have just joined us, please know that we are going to be putting out the recording of this entire session, so you won't have missed anything. So we have Ellum next, and we are ready to go. Ellum?
Okay, can you hear me? Can you
Yep.
hear me? Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your time. My name is Elham Hajasmaili, and I am a candidate in the dual title doctorate degree in art education and women's gender and sexuality studies. So can you go to the next slide? And the next one. Okay, art museums are informal learning places which should be accessible to all members of society. In this regard, the variety of services offered by museums must consider special equity and a full range of people's need to enhance their visiting experience. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, deaf and hard of hearing people have huge difficulties with accessibility and engagement within art museums, since most of the technology-based programs and devices are not appropriate for them. Combining real-world and virtual images, known as augmented reality technology, provides users with an immersive experience in which their high level of interaction enhances the visual and physical understanding and the process of learning. During the last decade, this technology has provided educators with various new strategies and methods of informal and formal teaching by changing the concept of space and time. With the limited studies performed on this emerging technology, AR has shown that it can play an essential role in knowledge transmission efficiency, especially for people with disability. Next slide, please. Museums are progressively utilizing augmented reality technology due to its great potential and possibilities in visualizing information to provide visitors with an enriched experience. Although a very limited number of studies have investigated the efficiency of AR on learning experience, there are some educational features and affordance in AR technology, including one, learning content in 3D perspectives; two, ubiquitous collaborative and situated learning; three, learners' senses of presence, immediacy, and immersion; four, visualizing the invisible; and five, bridging formal and informal learning. It was a quote by Wu et al., 2013, page 43. There is lack of a study about AR users' engagement and learning with deaf visitors. Hence, this study attempts to explore the efficiency of learning process through utilizing a mobile augmented reality MAR application with deaf visitors. Next slide, please. Mobile AR is defined as, quote, a type of AR where a mobile device, smartphone or tablet, is used to display and interact with virtual content, such as three-dimensional models, annotations, and videos that are overlaid on top of a real-time camera feed of the real world. End quote, Lane, 2018, page 2. In this regard, we developed an AR tool for assisting deaf museum visitors. The developed tool utilizes the AR technology prepared through a game design app called Unity. The tool is programmed to identify the artwork and in doing so, provide some visualized information associated with the artwork. In this study, the AR tool is generated for Android tablets. This technology is especially suitable for educational purposes in informal educational context, since in this case, the learning process is happening where the learner simultaneously is connected to the contextual information and location. All artifacts in museums have a descriptive label that provide information on the object. Typically, there are facilitators known as museum docents who provide information verbally for groups of visitors. However, none provide enough assistance for the deaf and hard of hearing visitors. Many deaf people struggle with texts in their national spoken language as well, especially those with prelingual deafness, since their first language is a national sign language and English is considered their first foreign language. Moreover, the low level of reading ability and the development of literacy among deaf people are significant barriers in deaf education and deaf individuals' academic and career achievements. So according to Sedlakova, 2016, quote, although many deaf people become successful readers, those that are successful should be considered as anomalous individuals rather than representative of the whole population, end quote, page 112. So, therefore, there is a need to adjust the method of informal education in museums with deaf and hard of hearing visitors. On the other hand, visual perception is usually well-trained and enhanced in deaf people. Thus, the process of learning is more effective when information is presented visually. This fact highlights the usability and importance of visual aids and call for a wider utilization of visual perception learning approaches for deaf and hard of hearing people in museums. In this study, we have developed an MAR application for deaf and hard of hearing people visiting a specific art museum called Palmer Museum of Art that is located in University Park in State College, PA. It's the main campus of Penn State University. Our study explores the efficiency and usability of the app on learning, visiting experience, and satisfaction of deaf and hard of hearing visitors. Next slide, please. This usability study that Dr. Kiefer Boyd and I are working on evaluates an AR prototype for a particular artwork titled Self-Portrait as Women Recovering from Effects of Male Gaze by Julie Heffernan in the Palmer Museum of Art on deaf and hard of hearing visitors. Next slide, please. The information provided in the AR application is mostly related to the theory of the male gaze and how it possibly could be connected to the hearing gaze concept for deaf and hard of hearing people's perspective. Next slide, please. The study explores deaf visitors' perception of feminism and their interpretation of the art related to feminist issues raised by the work, as well as the quality of their visiting experience and learning. Next slide, please. The AR application provides 3 videos that shows a deaf person translating the information to American Sign Language. Additionally, the AR app provides written descriptions for those who prefer reading. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right. Ryan has, get out of this.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan Patton here. I'm here to talk about HYPERDOCS. I first learned about HYPERDOCS through one of our graduate students, Oscar Keys, as a way to organize course content. This is really helpful for me as teaching courses year after year, having sort of a central repository for it, and then to use it over and over for following classes. So HYPERDOCS is a more formal name or a more commercialized name for this. It's using the Google Suite to teach. And so those of you using Google Classroom, this is really something that you can do. HYPERDOCS are also kind of like an updated version of WebQuest. So you can create content for students to then do self-paced learning using the internet as part of that. But then you can also use it to organize content. And I'm gonna mainly show you that aspect of it. So benefits of HYPERDOCS in the classroom setting, it's fewer lectures. So students have self-paced guides where they can do the work on their own, and you don't have to do as much talking. In this online environment, this also world that we're in now, that also is a way to organize online content, and if you don't like the course management system you have. You also, because it's self-paced, you can then work with students in a way that allows for individualization and to be able to see what they're doing using a common document to work from. The one of the real big benefits I love of the concept of HYPERDOCS is flexibility. So in this slide here, I have a spreadsheet that I've adjusted a grade, but then students have an individual Word or a Google Doc where they can see their grades with comments. So I make the adjustment in the spreadsheet, and then it goes into their own document. You can also use it, as I've used it, as a calendar. So then they can link out to multimodal work, whether it be an internet resource, a PDF file, audio, video, that sort of thing. And it gives them an opportunity to do that stuff. You can also personalize it, so have sort of a basic template for everybody, and then be able to personalize those documents based on student needs, so that they don't know that their document is different than somebody else's. It's pretty easy to customize for those purposes. Some ways to build a HYPERDOC. So this playlist model, this is sort of the checklist model, where you can assign a lot of tasks for students, and they can go at it at their own pace and fulfill those different activities. This might be helpful if you're having a technical component to your art project. Self-paced learning, this may be more helpful if you have a sort of a big idea you're working from, where students have to, do certain tasks before getting into the project, whether it be doing check-ins of what their big idea is, or some other sketchbooks, that sort of thing. The 5E model of engage, explore, explain, extend, and evaluate, that may be really useful for your lesson planning and working with the administrators and serve as a curriculum guide. The HYPERDOCS website has a number of these templates for you to work with. An agenda model is something that choice-based art teachers are probably pretty familiar with. You can convert the agenda model pretty easily to a HYPERDOCS format, having links to different components of the agenda that people can work from. Other uses for HYPERDOCS you could use as a substitute lesson plan. Just have a video or audio playlist that you have in your classroom for learning stations, a way to communicate with parents, and then also a department level or a course level HYPERDOC that you can share resources with. All right, so here's an example of how I have used a HYPERDOC. Again, creating like a calendar is the main way I use it. So in my syllabus calendar kind of format, so you see week to week what is due and what everybody is looking at is on the same page, and all the content is linked from that calendar. So in this specific example here now, it's a course reading. The PDF file is in a course folder that I have, and then the students just see the readings that are specific to them. So they don't have to wade through a big folder of documents to see what the reading is. They just click on the link and it goes to that. Same with video. If there's any other sort of website or video or any other content that I'm using with a class, I can either have the video saved in my Drive, Google Drive, or it can go out to an external website and students can see it. Last example is my grade book. I use a Google spreadsheet. I haven't been using the Google Classroom grading system, but my own spreadsheets, and then students get their own Google Doc that has their individual grades to it. So I put the grades in it and then can update it, and then a student can see their grade in the same table format that is on the spreadsheet. In this format also, it's just really easy to make those changes and paste them into the spreadsheet. Oh, here's the change of grade form. So I changed a number in the spreadsheet, and then it automatically pastes it into the Google Doc. Again, really simple to have those resources for students in that way. Here are the two main resources to look at: the Cult of Pedagogy, where I first heard about it as a thing, and then the hyperdocs.co is actually where you can find all these resources to think about how to organize and provide curriculum. Thanks a lot.
All right, and so let me get our next session up here, and we have Justin coming up. And Justin, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right, thank you. Here we go.
All right. Well, I'm Justin. I work with pre-service teachers at the University of New Mexico. Deborah, for some reason, the slide that you have up is not my slide. It has, there we go. Perfect. Thank you all for joining today. I wanted to share some work that some of my students were doing in our technology and art education class. So most of you are probably familiar with Google's Arts and Culture Selfie application. It's a platform that Google has that can uses facial recognition software, more specifically spatial and object properties, to find similarities between images that are posted through a mobile device, and then it suggests with varying degrees of accuracy artworks that are similar to it. So I wanted to say that while I had this first slide up, because these are several examples of my students' work. And with the Google Arts and Culture Selfie application, there were really two purposes to this project. The first purpose was to teach Photoshop. A lot of my students were coming in And we were using a lot of different tools in Photoshop to work with. And so in theory, what we were doing was testing the accuracy of this application. So the application would suggest an image with a varying degree of accuracy, and then students would try to recreate that image using digital photography and digital image manipulation. Next slide, please. Perfect. So this is this is the slide I used to introduce the project to my students. We also use Adobe Behance, which is a portfolio support system, to work as both a portfolio and a process folio. So students will create a board that has a series of related projects or assignments. They will record where they're at the end of the day or in the middle of the day. They'll reflect on the processes and the decisions that they've been making, and it'll all be organized in Behance. So you can see that essentially that these were the directions, which I've already kind of talked about, where students find their doppelganger as suggested by the Google Arts and Culture application. Then they're going to use Adobe Photoshop to kind of test the accuracy of that. And they're creating 3 different versions in Photoshop. So they're doing as close as possible to the suggested image. And then they're also creating what's called a +4, where they take objects and photograph those objects and then insert them into the image. So we didn't use any found images. These were all objects and images that were photographed by the student and then inserted and merged together. And lastly, they had some fun with creating and putting these images into IDs. Next slide, please. So at the top, these are examples of, this is how the Google Arts and Culture selfie application suggests. Yes, that's Felicia Day in the top left there. And this is not a new idea. Plugging students into culturally significant artworks has been around for decades, if not longer. And so these at the bottom are some examples of a similar project that I did with non-majors in an art appreciation class, where they had to restage without any use of digital manipulation. So again, one of the big ideas with technology is it's driven by concept and idea rather than the tool itself. So we're using the same idea, but we're testing one of the platforms that does something similar. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, all the photography, students had to match the lighting, the direction of the lighting, the warmth, the coolness of the lighting. We were working with the goal of doing as few digital manipulations in Photoshop as possible, taking the images and plugging them in. All of the objects, whether it was a skateboard or a backpack, in their +4 version of the photo had to be taken. And a lot of the students, I think they were just trying to test their professor, who has an irrational fear of animals. So we had a lizard and a dog and a rat all in the classroom that day as they photographed and tried to match the lighting direction. So we did a lot with green screen photography, and it's made it easier to merge the images. Next slide, please. There were really 2 purposes to this. One was to quote, test, unquote, the Google Arts and Culture application. But the second was to teach specific tools in Photoshop. So these are some of the tools that we were working with. My students had a real varying degree of familiarity with Photoshop. So obviously the big one that we're working with is layers. We worked with the different selection tools, how to transform, how to apply filters, how to use the clone stamp, which is very similar to the content fill that was discussed in an earlier presentation. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned with Behance, you can record the process. And so students would, as you can see in the back page of the screenshot that someone had posted to the Behance, as they started to plug images into the final piece. This was an example at the bottom where you have the original image that was suggested by the application. Then you have the plugged in image, which works as the test. And then you have the third image, which is the +4, where the student has inserted a backpack, sunglasses, a hat, and skateboard. Next slide, please. These are some other examples of student work where you have the original image that was suggested by Google, and then you have the +4 image that was created through digital photography and photo manipulation. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we had some fun with IDs. This was inspired by two things. On the right, there's a high school, I believe it's in Michigan, that allows seniors to create doppelganger IDs for their student IDs. But my students, I wanted them to have a sense of putting the image into a certain context. And you can see the criteria that we put there. Plus, we just purchased some new laminators. So we wanted to have some fun with that. And who doesn't want to make a fake ID with your new Creative Cloud skills? So next slide, please. What was probably most exciting about all of this was that one of the students who did this last semester did their student teaching the next semester, and they did the same sort of project using slightly different platforms with their middle school students. So you can see the teacher is up there in the top left. She did this as one of my students and then carried the idea over as she did her student teaching, and the works that you see at the bottom and on the right are examples of 6th and 7th graders, which I think they turned out great. Next slide, please. So while the project was really interesting for students to do, what really struck my interest was the discussions that surrounded this, where students were trying to come to terms with the image that Google was telling them that they most closely resembled. So a lot of research in identities, whether student identities or teacher identities, deal with the idea of identity formation as a dialogue or as a reflexive process. And so what happens when that dialogue becomes one-sided, because the algorithm is essentially telling the students that this is who they look like. And they didn't always agree. And so while we premised this as the idea of testing the accuracy of the Google Arts and Culture selfie application, it became a question of who tells us who we are, who determines who we are. And so with the application, it becomes a one-sided dialogue. So we have a large Latina population at UNM. We also have the largest indigenous population of students in the nation. And so my students would say that the algorithm would essentially break down the student. If the student was white, they would suggest as white, and then the algorithm would lump all students of color into one giant group. And there was no nuance in terms of what the algorithm decided. A lot of students that had a lot of female students that had shorter hair, and the algorithm would point out and suggest images that were male images. And so there was a lot of discussion about cultural biases, and not only that, but the content that went into the makeup of the image collections that the students were putting forward. Next slide, please. And this is my final slide. And so what this really brought to attention was what makes up this idea of how we project ourselves and how others essentially put forward suggestions on who we are. This idea of how much our image is related to our character and how comfortable we feel with other people suggesting that we look like this. And so it's a great project. There's a lot of discussion in terms of self-identity here, which I hope to explore further in future research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. All right, we're ready for Chris. You ready? Unmute your phone. Oh, unmute.
There we are.
There you go.
Awesome. All right, let's roll, folks. All right, a little bit about me. Next slide. All right, this is New Horizons for Digital Fabrication in the K-12 Makerspace. I work at a middle school in the Northeast section of Philadelphia, and I also teach an adjunct class, K-12 printmaking for educators. All right, next slide. All right, so I first start off my kids with using the Ultimaker design engine, and I also use Morphe and Tinkercad. And I really am real blessed that I have some pretty awesome students and at this middle school, and we have a very large makerspace. And these are some of the designs that I created using the Ultimaker design engine, which I had a hand in doing. Next slide. All right, this one's from last year when I worked at another school. This is actually a ninth grade design. This is a mashup using something called Chimera, which comes out of, you can actually 3D print molecules. It comes out of University of California, San Francisco, and Morphe, which I'm an ambassador for, and coded design called Turtle Art, which I like to use. So this is a true mashup, and this was all this girl's interest. She actually ended up using this for one of her science projects. Next slide. Some other monuments. I'm pretty lucky that I have 2 structure scanners. These were from last year. So we did some monuments using self-portraits, and we used Structure, Morphe, and Tinkercad to do like a big mashup. And these are probably around maybe a couple inches tall. And both of these students are now, one's in art school on the right and the other one's in college for nursing. So really cool applications. Next slide. All right, these are my new ones that I've been really into. Like I said, I'm an ambassador of Morphe. That's my son, Hutch. So I've really been into 3D modeling. So I actually did some virtual reality and did a screenshot using him and another design. And I have connections to University of Pennsylvania. So I like to take architectural models that I've drawn or taken photos of, and then create models like this Pantheon, and then actually put them in the actual the build plate. If you're familiar with 3D printing, then there's an actual one on the right that I actually 3D printed. Next page. Next slide. Oh, we lost it. Oh, there we are. All right, the real super lucky again, I've got a Glowforge now, so my students have been doing digital designs and then making laser cuts out of them, and actually using different materials such as chipboard, and on the bottom you can see some etched masonite. Next slide. We also did a cat prosthetic. It was not the students' design, these 8th graders, or yes, I'm sorry, the 7th graders, but they did fabricate it, they sliced it, they did everything. And this cat who has swimmer legs, who doesn't walk very well, and wasn't actually pooping, to be quite honest. Now he's mobile, he's going to the bathroom and running around, so that's pretty cool. Next slide. So I'm also an ambassador for Makey Makey, so these are some of the fabrications that we do. Next slide. And this one is from last year. So we used protoplastic conductive filament to actually make a real controller, and they actually do the scratch coding within it. Next slide. And these are some from, there's some adaptive devices on the right for some of my special ed students, and there's some screenshots from the ones that we did this year with my 7th graders. Next slide. Here's one that's was etched and laser cut and had some conductive buttons with the 3D prints. Next slide. So OpenPress is a project that I've been watching, and I'm friends with Martin. He's a 24-year-old illustration and design student in Germany. And I used these last year at my prior school, and I'm going to be using, well, I was supposed to use them this year. So we did a lot of 3D prints and designing, and then made relief prints from them. And on the top left, you could see I did a color separation picture of my son. So there's a black one, the orange one, and then there's a 4-color separation using sacred geometry. Next slide. I've got probably about 12 of them, so this was earlier in the school year. Next slide. And there's the plate, there's the print, and then there's a close-up of it. Probably not the best print in there, but pretty cool stuff. I also use conductive ink on them sometimes. Next slide. So this is one of my really shining moments. This is Sarah. Sarah is a nonverbal spastic cerebral palsy. And initially my students at Chad, my prior school, the one student designed it, I redesigned it. And this is one of her first drawings on the bottom left. And that's Sarah and her teacher, Laura Roth, who's also an excellent Pennsylvania teacher. Next slide. Some of the new things that I've been doing is I've been working with Ecovative Design and doing biodesign with mycelium, and then putting, I'm also an ambassador for HYPERDOCS, and we have coatable lights. So my students last year and supposedly this year, we're going to be coding lights, then using biodesigns where they created molds in Morphe, 3D print them in the Ultimaker 3D printers, and then be able to use them. Actually, the one on the right has adaptive buttons made out of the same filament the students used in Makey Makey design. Next. These are some of the lights that we were playing with at my at Baldy. And these are just basic 3D prints, and then I put some wild red lights that I had gotten free from people in my neighborhood. Next slide. Here's a shot of it with the coating. Next slide. And these are some of the various projects that I've been working on. So we have coded LEDs in the bottom right, Bird Brain Technologies, which we do drawings with using coding. You can see that we have a little shell on the bottom with cardboard that we had some robot wars. And then we had some jewelry on the top left. Then on the top right last year, I had some of my students actually create a maze and 3D print objects like that big donut. And next slide. And that's not showing up, but that's my my code for my website, which has all links to a lot of the images and my social media and lessons if you're interested in them. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you to all of our presenters. I really appreciate everyone's flexibility and in this crazy time and technical difficulties and hackers and you name it. So I appreciate that. I am going to attempt to open up chat in case anyone has any questions. I know Christopher has another session, so he may have to leave us, but
I moved Chris's session forward just because we were
okay.
I knew he was here, so yeah.
How do you open up the chat for everyone now that we closed it off, Tim?
I don't know if that's possible. Let's see. Well, you could have people just unmute themselves. And
okay, let's do that then.
That might be
I
easier.
think they can raise their hand, right? If they
that's right.
have a question. All right, so if you have a question you want to ask one of our presenters, just go ahead and raise your hand. Anybody?
Well, I have a question. I'll start while I'm here.
Go ahead, Tim.
I think Nick is still here, right? Let's see. Yeah,
yes.
For Nick, I was wondering, how did you I liked how you created that glitch with Photoshop with the students. How did you do that?
The glitched artwork was actually very obtainable. I didn't even use we didn't use Photoshop. You need to use a text editor, which is different than Microsoft Word. So if you're a Mac user, that means you're using Notebook or TextEdit, and then you could be using Notebook if you're a PC. But you just take any like JPEG file, you right-click to Control Open, and then you force it to select a text editor rather than a preview or something like that. And it causes the computer to do something called data bending. So it's going to take what should be an image file, bend it out of place to make it fit, and it looks like a whole bunch of gibberish. It's not formal, human-friendly code. Students then are told, don't touch the top 20%, the bottom 20%, but in that middle 60%, you can edit, copy, paste. And at first, it's just random, additions, subtractions, deletions, but and they'll just see what the glitch creates. After they're used to creating that glitched file, I then challenge them to go more of a conceptual route. What is the image you're glitching, and what is the process you're doing to glitch that image? So I had a student who she glitched her proposal, since that's the only documentation of the memory. So then to glitch it, she actually got the GPS coordinates of the location that she was proposed to and put that within the image file. So the type of glitch then connects to it. I've had students get CD covers and then they add their favorite song lyrics into the image to see how that causes a glitch. So then after you save the text file, you just open it up as normal, which it's still saved as the JPEG file, and then you'll see what type of glitch occurs. So there's a good amount of YouTube videos on there as well. if I didn't describe it in enough detail, but it is definitely approachable and you don't need to download any other programs or content.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Hi, this is Jean Bjork. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure. I've been jumping in and out here. I was just going to mention a little more with Glitch. There is a art teacher that teaches at the Chicago Art Institute. His name is James Connolly. And if chat was enabled, I'd actually share this link with you. But a few years ago, I had a bunch of students in photography and really interested in Glitch. And so we did a lot of explorations, both via Glitch, doing video Glitch, as well as just single imagery Glitch as well. And so I'd be happy to share that doc. I'll try to share it with Tim, and then hopefully he could add it to the resources, because it's a great kind of history of Glitch. And then also, if you guys are on YouTube, the series called Off Book, which is by PBS, has a fantastic Glitch art video you can watch, and it's a great way to introduce your kids to that idea of sort of breaking the image. The one from James Connolly is really cool because it goes into kind of the history of you know, going back to TV and the old fashioned like snow on the screen and that kind of stuff, and how that's actually really desirable now as part of Glitch art. So anyway, I will try to get that doc shared somehow to you guys.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions? While we're waiting to see if anyone has a question, on the screen there is a URL. If you are interested in applying for next year's Pechakucha in Chicago, you can go to that Google form and apply. Generally, they're about 5-minute presentations, and we usually do use a timer because of this situation. I just kind of let them go a little longer than they would have normally. But that kind of depends on the number we have that are live participating. But if you're interested, go ahead and apply now. We would love to have you join us. Any other questions?
Yeah, and I'll just add for everybody too, make sure we have a new grant that we're putting out for teachers. So we're kind of giving funds, and then all you need to do is be able to share something out, write an article or share a video about how you're using the tool. So, you know, it's a great opportunity to maybe get something for your class that you wouldn't be able to get elsewise.
That's correct. And if you are following us on Collaborate, the link is posted there for you to apply for a grant. This is for the Art Education Technology Interest Group. So if you haven't joined that Collaborate group, just when you go on there, you can click on that, join that group, and you can access all of the links for those types of things. Well, if there are no other questions, I really thank everyone for your patience and participation today. And I think we've got a couple more sessions today. And so I hope to see you all in those as well.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.